Hi there, friends. I'm Vasco. I'm part of the team behind the first global Scrum Master Summit. If you're a Scrum Master, the Scrum Master Summit is a place to learn, to share, and to meet new friends. We will have lots of live sessions where you can meet and network with other Scrum Masters from all over the globe. So make sure you check it at bit.ly/SM Summit and the numeral 21. That's bit.ly/SMSUMMIT21. We have 7 amazing keynotes or more, as we are still organizing the conference as I record this, and 8 tracks that feature people like you and thought leaders sharing their insights and knowledge to help you become an awesome Scrum Master. So once again, check it out at bit.ly/SM Summit 21. That's all lowercase, all one word, SM Summit and the numeral 21. I'll see you on the virtual conference floor. All right, now on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Team Tuesday this week with Philip Rogers. Hi, Philip. Welcome back.
Thanks. Happy Tuesday to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Happy Tuesday indeed. It's not just Happy Monday, it's also Happy Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
So, Philip, on Tuesdays, we talk about the teams that self-destruct, of course, but we'll dive into that in a minute. Tell us first, what was potentially the book that most inspired you in your career as a Scrum Master?
Well, I'm going to pick one I suspect a lot of people do. So, surprise, surprise. One reason I mentioned that book is...
So Philip mentioned Agile Retrospectives by Darby and Larsen, just because we are on video. I know which book he showed, but not everybody did. So Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great, I think it is.
That's right. Yeah, so first of all, that was a book that I happened to come across early in my Agile journey. And I would say it's a very good thing because in a number of ways. So first of all, when you think about, facilitation and working with teams, and ultimately, I think one of the things you really strive to achieve is continuous improvement. And so when you talk about, a team context, certainly one of the things we look at the most, one of the best opportunities for that to happen is the retrospective. And so you could say I kind of consider myself a retrospective specialist in that I have lots of techniques, sort of like I sort of treat every team like a laboratory experiment in the sense that they always have their own unique problems, they have their own unique challenges, and I just feel like it's too common for people to just sort of fall back on the plus minus delta for every retrospective, and I just think that's a missed opportunity. And so I have a tendency to really like to change things up. And so I introduced this Trello board with retrospective techniques that's been really, really popular in the Agile community. And, I just started experimenting with those things a lot, early in my Scrum Master days, and I've continued to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet the book also inspired you to look at retrospectives and the techniques from a different perspective. I think the deceptive simplicity of the model that they provide, right? Because there's a lot of complexity behind that model, but
there is.
It is simple to even remember, right? The 5 stages of a retrospective can lend itself to a lot of depth when you start populating that with specific activities. Like one of the things that very often I talk to guests is, when we do, and some guests will mention the 5 stages. One of the challenges I see is that a lot of teams are always in a hurry, right? And retrospectives usually end up happening in sprint planning day.
Right.
It's not all the time. It's not for every team, but for some teams it is, and it's almost feels like rushed. So what I've tried to innovate on my side is how do you compress those 5 phases into a half an hour retrospective, or even a 20-minute retrospective, or a 15-minute retrospective, but so that we keep the discipline, so that there's no excuse. Hey, we're in a hurry. Could we stop this early? No problem. I've got a retro we can run in 15 minutes. Let's do this, right? And just bring those that simple model, right? All of those 5 phases of the retrospective into a short time, so that the team continues to exercise that muscle of reflection and improvement.
Absolutely.
So, of course, we do this retrospectives because our goal is to help teams hopefully avoid some of the patterns we are about to discuss. So
Mhm.
on Tuesdays, we explore what are some of those patterns that ultimately lead to problems. So Philip, tell us a story of a team, a little bit about their context, but also what was that pattern or habit that developed over time that ultimately led to problems?
Absolutely. So I'm thinking back some time ago. This was in the context of a federal government setting, and so for anybody who's spent some time working with teams in more of a government context, you probably are familiar with some of the unique challenges that can often go with that. So in this particular case, one of the more interesting ones that was kind of unique to their setting was this particular organization was doing a transformation, and so we started off a core set of teams, and as is actually fairly common in the government sector, the teams were actually quite large, and one of the reasons why was they actually had union representation as far as the federal employees were concerned. And in the abstract, hey, no problem, union, yeah, sure, I understand that's a really important thing. But where you run into problems potentially is where based. So in this instance, what was happening was we had testers who belonged to the union, who federal, and so basically what they would say was, all right, well, the only kind of testing we're going to do is X, because they were essentially kind of falling back on their labor agreement, which again, I understand the concept behind it, right? But in a team context, that's quite destructive, right? Because basically you're saying, I will only do this one thing, and anything else I will not do. And so, that for one of the things that prevents you from doing is making the team smaller, right? Because basically you had like half a dozen of these federal testers who are just on the team, and you didn't really have any option. Then you have another half a dozen testers who are contractors who will basically do any kind of testing you ask them to do. And so what that does is it creates this whole separation of concerns that we absolutely don't want to see. In an agile team context, what we want to see is willingness to kind of work together, and kind of that everybody's a tester mentality, right? And so this particular situation, that was a huge challenge for us, because we basically, I mean, the sad fact was we really had to work around that subgroup of testers and say, okay, they're only going to do their thing when, so we'll just have to move forward with everybody else picking up the rest of the testing. So that's what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely not an easy situation. Now, you talked about a very specific aspect, which is when there's a labor agreement and
Hmm.
and some of the people in the team refuse to do any other work that is not listed in the labor agreement.
Hmm.
You know, they have the right to do so. So there's nothing we can do about it, right? So one of the things we learned very early in Scrum is to challenge the rules that are not written, but some rules are written, and you just have to follow them. Uh,
Yeah.
but of course, as a Scrum Master, you talked about one potential strategy, which is the
Hmm.
workaround. And I think that team members that refuse to do X is actually a very common problem, right?
Yes.
Like team members that refuse to do pair programming, team members
Right.
that refuse to do unit testing, team members
Yep.
that refuse to do code reviews, team members that
Hmm.
refuse to do, for example, in this case, a specific type of testing. So,
Hmm.
uh, how can we as Scrum Masters prepare for that? Because sooner or later, there's going to be something like that. I mean, I the obvious thing that comes to mind is the front end back end division, right?
Yeah.
We have 5 back end developers because we expected to have most of the work on the back end. We have one front end developer, but unfortunately most of the work is at the front end. What do we do now? Right? So when you look back and from your experience and maybe from what you learn in that situation, what do you
Hmm.
think we could do as Scrum Masters to overcome those constraints?
Yeah. To start with, is trying to get to a point where it feels less like a collection of individuals and more like a team. So like I said, we did have those unique challenges, but that doesn't prevent you from working on the teaming aspects of things, in terms of, all right, how are we going to collaborate? And so you're probably not surprised that the next thing I'm going to say is something like a team working agreement. So okay, we recognize we have this set of rules that, that is there. Okay, what does that mean? And then we just have to have a frank conversation about, all right, how are we going to all work together? So, okay, the group that's union, you've made clear this is what you're willing to do. So that, that's effectively part of our working agreement. And then we also will negotiate when it comes to what other types of things can we do together. And so, you mentioned pairing, certainly pairing is really important, whether it's, if you have these, discrete roles, tester, analyst, developer, et cetera. Okay, fine. So we'll talk through what does that look like in terms of, are there opportunities for those people to pair? Because I think that's a really powerful construct. And I think sometimes people get too hung up on it has to be pure pair programming. I don't think that's true. I think pair programming is great, but I think there are also lots of opportunities for people to pair, shall we say, less formally. And I think that's another great thing that teams can do, which also helps you catch problems early. Instead of waiting for to go into formal code review, to have a colleague just do a quick over the shoulder and say, oh yeah, did you think of this? Oh no, I didn't. And then if it's the developer, for instance, then they can make some quick changes before they actually check it in for formal code review. So there's a lot of simple things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. No matter what constraints or restrictions we have in place, as a team, we can always find out a solution to overcome the impact that those restrictions or constraints might have. That's a great point. And definitely team agreements are a great tool that we have in our toolbox as Scrum Masters to help the team come to that shared understanding. Do you have a favorite blog post or resource about facilitating team working agreements that you would like to share?
Yes, I have one on my blog. I can send to you. You can keep talking. I think I can track it down.
No worries. So send that over, and we'll add those on the show notes. So thank you for sharing, Philip.
Sure, my pleasure.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.